Alright, now we're going to be getting back into the metalworking projects within the next couple of weeks here. Things have just been hectic. There's been a huge heat wave in the Northeast here. It's been pretty much 80s and 90s for the past 3 weeks. So I've been running around like crazy at work. Plus it's been hot as hell down in the cellar here. And I just really haven't had time to come down here and start making stuff. But I have a few projects in the works. The next metalworking project, which I should be able to get to in another couple of weeks or so. I'll be on vacation for a week, and then I'm gonna have to run my company for a week while my boss is away, so I'm not gonna be around for the next couple of weeks. But we're gonna make a cat's head for the lathe, which is basically a device that will allow you to use a piece of square stock or hex stock in your steady rest. And also some other coming projects. I have a half-horse motor that needs to be rebuilt. It's got bad bearings, and I believe one of the starting centrifugal switch is sticking, so we'll be taking a look at that. And also I'm going to be taking a look eventually when I can get the motor and everything for these. This is a VFD that was given to me by somebody who had replaced it, and it does work, and the only problem with it is the switch there, you can see, is broken off, the little control panel. But what this does is takes 208 normal single phase voltage and will transform it into a three-phase current, and it's does that by varying the frequency across the legs, which will basically allow a three-phase motor to become variable speed, and you can adjust the speed from this little potentiometer here. And we're going to be taking a little look at that, and we're going to be making some sort of remote operation stations where this can just be mounted to the wall, and where the original switch was on my lathe, I can mount a keypad somewhat similar to this. And I don't think I can get a remote display out there without really doing some electronics work, but we'll go through all that and figure that out. So those are some things that are in the works. One thing I just wanted to show you today, and this, in my opinion, is the best meter I have ever used. This one is brand new. I've had one for probably eight years or so, and then it broke. But it didn't break because of any flaw in the meter itself. It basically broke from operator stupidity. Apparently they're not designed to survive a 25-foot fall off of a roof. That will break it. But this is the one that I use at work, and I love it. And now I've used tons and tons and tons of meters. I've owned the stick meters like this that encompass everything in one. I've owned the separate multimeters with the dial and the separate ammeter, and just, it's actually technically called an ammeter, not an amp probe. Amp probe is a brand name, just like Q-tip is a brand name and Allen wrench is a brand name. But everybody calls an amp probe. So when I was in high school, we had digital multimeters that we used, and we had one digital amp probe. All the rest were analog, and I don't know if any of you guys remember having to use the analog amp probes to measure thermocouples. You used to have to take a piece of wire, make a coil out of it, clamp it to the thermocouple and read across the coil, and then whatever reading you got, divide by the number of loops you put in the coil. But all that is gone with the introduction of cheaper and more accurate digital meters. Now, if this isn't necessarily something you're going to have as, say, a hobbyist or anything like that, this is pretty much a professional meter. It's for people who are electricians. This one is specifically geared to the HVAC field, and I'll show you why. I've owned plenty of different meters. I've owned actual amp probe. I've owned UEI, Greenlee, Fluke. Personally, I hate Fluke. I can't stand Fluke. I hate them. They're bulky, they're huge, they suck. Personal opinion. And I've also owned A.W. Sperry and pretty much across the board. And this is the best one that I found. And like I said, I came across this about 7 or 8 years ago. And this is just the new one that I picked up to replace the one that I broke. There are two versions of this one, an HS35, which is the one that I have, and HS36. The only difference between them is the 36 has a backlit display, which really doesn't matter much to me, and the HS36 is true RMS reading, which is nice, but for me at least, not going to make that much of a deal, because I'm not doing much with any kind of rectifiers or speed controls or anything like that. True RMS is basically a more accurate reading. Your alternating current is represented as a sine wave. First it goes one way over amplitude, and the other one amplitude module, you know what it is. It looks like a sine wave with a little line in the middle when people look at oscilloscopes and everything else. This, if it's a perfect sine wave and everything else, this reads perfectly accurately. But if you have any kind of rectifiers or anything in the system, especially solid state motor controls or anything like that, it'll modify that sine wave and it'll be clipped. And this won't be accurate. It'll probably give you you know, it'll only be like 40% of actual voltage and stuff like that. But like I said, I don't do much along that lines. The units and stuff that I work on don't have much of that. So the true RMS reading ones will probably run you an extra $50 to $60 over. This one here cost me $185, I believe. And now, if you're a professional, obviously you're gonna get a really, really good product. For the homeowner, the little cheapo guys, you know, these little multimeter heaters with the dial and all the different settings, those will work for what you need to do. Personally, I hate these. I do carry them in the truck. I carry them as a backup, and I also have a cheap ammeter too. But this will also do voltage in it and everything else. I do carry these in the truck for two reasons. One, as a backup, and two, if it's pouring out and I absolutely have to work on the unit, I don't want to get my $200 meter soaked. I'll get my $20 meter soaked, so I really don't care if I break this. And 90% of the time what I'm using this for anyway is going to be continuity through different switches and things like that. And this one actually happens to only be rated 300 volt. So anyway, this is what you get. You have a nice little padded case here, and here is your meter right here. Zoom in a little bit. Now this, I know it sounds stupid, but this is one of the best features I've ever seen in a meter. Usually you have your leads all dangling and you gotta, you know, kind of wrap them up and jury rig them together sometime. They have these at a specific length, and they have them set so that when they're in their slots in the back, you take them, loop them once over your finger, draw them up over the top, and hook them right between each other, and they stay perfectly wrapped around there. I love that. So this is auto ranging, unlike this here. This one you would have to set your range for what you want, especially on your resistance. So you would start off at the lowest one if you didn't know anywhere around your resistance to work up till you actually got a reading. Now this one will automatically do it. You can see it just has one setting here. Here's your voltage reading, hertz, so you're never going to use that. There's your this is your resistance and continuity tester, and as you can see, this is one thing that you need in a meter. You absolutely need a continuity tester of some sort on your meter, and you need there it is. There is a continuity tester. You need one that beeps. You absolutely need it. It makes your life so much easier. You can cheat and use your resistance on your other meter, and when you touch it, as you can see, if you have a full circuit, you'll get no resistance or very little resistance. Actually, I'm reading resistance through my body a little bit. You can see just from touching it. Then down here, this setting is used with a temperature thermocouple, which I'll show you in a minute, and this setting over here will be used to test your capacitors. This over here is for your DC voltage, and this little symbol over here will, depending on what head you have to put on the top, which I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute, it'll tell you what setting to put it on. Now, the other thing that this has, the other thing that this has is non-contact voltage. So you press and hold this button. If you have a wire here, see this wire, if it's drawing any kind of current, you can tell that a circuit is live without touching it. This will also has your normal maximum and minimum settings, so whenever you touch it here, you can see what the maximum reading was that you got and your minimum reading was that you got. And this is a range button that you can manually change the range if you need to, but it is auto ranging. Now let me just show you one thing here. This has a voltage alarm, whereas anything over 30 volts it'll beep. I don't know why it does that, but it makes it easier for if you're just going through a unit and testing voltage and see if you have voltage. So you can hang this up somewhere and you don't really need to even see it, but if I stick this in the outlet, then you see that it beeps. Now, another neat feature that this has is the probes themselves. Now, a lot of times I have a set of what are called wiggies in my bag, which are is basically just an analog stick that tests voltage. All it does is test voltage, and there's a little spring that jumps up and it vibrates. So you just test it, click, click, click. You don't leave it in the circuit, you're not supposed to. You're just testing to see if you actually have voltage at that point. And they're very, very small and very convenient to use. And you would be able to hold it in one hand and have the probe out the other end, so you can use it with without having to hang it up or prop it up somewhere, unlike these. Now, what you can do is these leads here actually come apart. So now you have single hand operation of your meter without having to clip this in somewhere. And to clip it anywhere, you have a magnet, and it's a pretty strong magnet right here. It'll stick to anything. Unlike these stupid little multimeters that usually have this retarded prop thing. But usually if I'm working on an air conditioning unit, the roof of the unit is above my eye level or right at my eye level, so this thing is up here and you can't really see it. This I can just stick it in magnetic right to the door. So let's put this back together again. Now, the other neat little thing you have here is to convert this to read amperage. What they have is a head, and what you do, take the leads out and just clip that right in the top, and now you're ready to read amperage. Unlike, say, flukes that are usually have these built in and they're really, really bulky, you can see how much difference, you know, this thing is about at least half the size of the meter itself. So to take this off, it makes it way, way less bulky. And it also has the little clip, this little tab here, that will allow you to, usually all your wires are connected with zip ties. That'll kind of allow you to separate the wires right into that little clip there for you to get it on. Unlike say this one here, which you're going to stick your finger in there and make enough room to clip your wire through that. And now also what you can do with this, and this is especially good if you watch the other video where I showed how on some of the rooftop units you have the doors that you have to shut to let the unit run. If I'm reading amperage on the compressor and I want to see what the amperage is doing over an amount of time of running, I can with these, but I'm not getting a very accurate reading because I'm opening up the door, which is going to short cycle my airflow, which is going to artificially make my amperage go up because my compressor is working harder. So what you can do with this is take the tips of this off and plug it right into the bottom of the amp probe head. Now I have all this room here to be able to clip this inside the unit and then have this outside the unit and outside the door, and I can easily read amperage. Now another little fun thing that they got with this is if you take this off, and you have to take them off to use it, they also give you in here, they give you these alligator clips here to use too if you wanted to, say, clip this to ground and then test all your leads. But they give you this, which is a thermocouple. It's a temperature sensor, which is keyed with one small prong, one large prong, and it gets plugged right into here. Then you click your meter over to your temperature settings, and you're able to read temperature wherever the very tip, which is in here somewhere, there it is right there, that little ball is. And you can see right now it's around 85, 86 degrees in here. It's pretty toasty, so you can see when I touch it, it goes right up. Now another neat little thing on why this is specifically geared towards the HVAC field is you have all these different types of heads that you can plug into the top of this meter to do different things. This one here is for superheat readings, which is for an adjustment of the expansion valves and things like that. This one here is for combustion checking for oil heat to measure the CO2 levels and stuff. It's how they adjust oil burners. This one is a carbon monoxide detector. This is just a voltage head. This is for data logging with the big meter, which is this here. You can log different readings that you get, so you can kind of get a trend and everything going. This is gas pressure, to test any kind of gas pressure off of gas valves. This is the same thing, it just does it in 2 spots. This is for milliamps and things like that. You can also do it with just a regular head, but this is also for the data logger. Microwave oven diode tester, which you can test your diodes for your microwave ovens, which I would have no use for that. The amp probe, which is what the unit comes in. Infrared temperature thing, the little laser temperature thermometers, that's what that is. Dual temperature head, so you have 2 of those little sensors and the top, so you can take the temperature at 2 different spots and tell the difference between them. This is a psychrometer, which is a measurement of relative humidity. It's applicable in certain HVAC sizings and different things like that, and getting the humidity in a building. I've actually never seen anybody ever use one of these. I've used one of them in school, and it was the old It was called the sling psychrometer. You would have to spin it by hand, and it was like this weird contraption. And a vacuum gauge, which would measure vacuum in microns, and it's how we tell that all of that refrigerant system is A, sealed, and that B, all the air and moisture is out of the system before we charge it up. But like I said, this is a very, very good unit, and it does, if I can put everything back here, does have one of the best test lead storage methods I've seen so far. I absolutely love that, and they're great. And these things, like I said, will last forever. My other one, which unfortunately I did throw out, I mean, it was beat. It's been out. It was scuffed up just from use and everything else, scratched up, and it still worked. The only thing I've ever had to do with it was replace the test leads. I think I replaced them twice. Once they started to fray right at the bend point, and once I actually got them caught in a fan blade, which no matter how careful you are, it's gonna happen to you once. You will suck these things into a fan blade. And that's pretty much it. And like I said, not necessarily something that a homeowner really needs, but for the trades and everything, it is definitely one of the best that I have used, and I will continue to use them as long as I am in the trade. And I absolutely love them. That, in my opinion, so much better than a Fluke. Now obviously this is for mostly high voltage stuff, like 120 volt and above. You know, you can do DC voltage, but I mean, this isn't something, if you're an electronics guy or anything like that, this is not a multimeter for you. You'll need something that does a lot more, has a lot more resistance capabilities, it has a lot more DC capabilities, and a lot more on, you know, reading capacitors and different things like that. But for the tradesman and an electrician, excellent tool. And I will continue to buy them. If this one ever dies, I will definitely buy another one, exact same model. So like I said, within the next couple weeks I will start getting back into the metalworking projects. I know I kind of took a turn off of those for a bit, but as you saw, it's about 86 degrees down here, which is kind of toasty. So hopefully once the weather cools down and I get a slightly slow at work, I'll have some time to play around down here, and we'll see you on the next video.